has been a massive plot hole in Boruto that's been eating away at me for years. And while I've been holding my tongue about it in hopes that eventually it would be addressed before I ever had to bring it up, unfortunately, I can no longer do that. And see, I believe that Boruto is a great story. I know a lot of people don't like it because they feel as though it doesn't fill the massive shoes that Naruto left behind, but I am not in that camp at all. And one of my favorite things about Boruto is that it always covers its tracks, much better than even its predecessor did, introducing substantially less plot holes into the Naruto timeline than either Naruto or Shippuden, all the while managing to change a lot of the existing lore that was introduced in Naruto and Shippuden. But there is one flaw, a flaw that exists at the very core of Two Blue Vortex that I just can't quite ignore. And that flaw is that Naruto could be reversed summoned out of the Daikoku-ten by the toads of Mount Myoboku at really any moment. So why isn't he? Well, it's either because no one's able to get to Mount Myoboku, because Naruto is inaccessible in the Daikoku-ten, or because it's a plot hole. And today we're gonna be trying to figure out just which one of those answers fits the best. So with no further ado, let's dive directly into Boruto's biggest plot hole is killing me. But before we get to picking apart one of my favorite mangas coming out right now, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for an additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, guys, you can go ahead and find my Naruto reaction series using the fourth wall link in my description below. Naruto vs. Neji is officially starting. So what some of you are probably thinking to yourself right now is, Nick, what do you mean that Naruto could simply be reverse summoned at really any moment by any of the toads from Mount Myoboku? What is reverse summoning? How does it work? Why haven't the toads tried it yet? And more than that, how could they possibly summon Naruto out of a timeless pocket dimension? Well, unfortunately, not only is it possible for any of the toads of Mount Myoboku to reverse summon Naruto to Mount Myoboku, saving him from the Daikoku-ten really whenever they want to, there also isn't a whole lot of reasons as to why they haven't tried. See, yes, the toads of Mount Myoboku were most likely affected by omnipotence when it was fired off by Ada, making everybody believe that not only Naruto was dead, but Boruto was his killer. And just because the toads are senjutsu masters and non-human does not mean that they wouldn't be affected by omnipotence. It was an earth-wide genjutsu attack that should have permanent effects. Now, obviously, there are arguments to be made that some of the more intelligent toads or some of the more far-out-there toads, like the Great Toad Sage, could possibly break out of the effects of omnipotence either through intelligence or premonitions. There's really no way for us to confirm as to whether or not that's happened, and there's no reason for us to assume that it will. Yes, all of the Great Toad Sage's dreams become true, and yes, maybe one of those dreams could tell the Great Toad Sage that Boruto is innocent and Naruto is still alive, but A, the Great Toad Sage barely dreams, and B, when it does dream, it barely remembers its dreams. Yes, the Great Toad Sage knew that Jiraiya would eventually be the teacher to the child of prophecy who would either lead the world to destruction or to salvation. However, as to who that child was gonna be, the Great Toad Sage couldn't say, which is why Jiraiya thought it was Nagato, Minato, and then eventually Naruto. Actually, it was Minato, then it was Nagato, and then it was Naruto. Now, some of you who have been listening to me for maybe too long would point out that even if the toads were affected by omnipotence, the toads of Mount Myoboku have the Truth Stone, a stone introduced in a non-canon episode in Mount Myoboku that had in it inscribed the entire history of the world. And thus, this concept kind of introduced the toads of Mount Myoboku as the history keepers of the Naruto universe, which makes sense as according to filler, they had taught Hagoromo how to become a toad sage and are an incredibly long-lived and separate from humanity species that can act as living historians documenting what happens in the world on a year-by-year basis. And thus it's stated on this Truth Stone, which was supposedly unaffected by the control of infinite Tsukiyomi, the true history of the world, a story that was certifiably different than the one that Kaguya was trying to spin. But Nick, we know that omnipotence not only affects the people of Earth, but also all of their belongings. If somebody takes a photo of Naruto, Kawaki, and Boruto all together and says point at Naruto's son every single time, they will point at Kawaki. Even if they look at family photos of the Uzumaki family prior to Kawaki's interjection, reaction, those affected by omnipotence will look at a photo of Boruto and say that's Kawaki. And therefore it's not crazy to assume that the toads who are also under the effect of omnipotence would either not be able to interpret the appropriate tellings that are told to them on the truth stone, or would simply see whatever omnipotence wanted them to see when they looked at the truth stone. And that's if you even believe in the concept of the truth stone, which, like I said, comes from filler. But here's the thing. Plenty of people know that Naruto is not dead. The toads don't need to know. See, both Boruto and Kashin Koji know that Naruto is still alive, as Boruto is unaffected by omnipotence, and while Kashin Koji is technically affected by omnipotence, his 10 paths showed him prior to the firing of omnipotence being fired, and therefore he knew that his memories were going to be altered. So Boruto or Kashin Koji was able to get in contact with Mount Myoboku. They could simply tell the toads, try to reverse summon Naruto, at which point, objectively, they would. But Nick, you need a contract with the toads of Mount Myoboku to get there. No, you don't. See, ignoring for a second that the only reason that Jiraiya and all of those around Jiraiya, like Naruto and Minato, ever became toad sages in the first place is because Jiraiya tried to summon a summoning animal without having a contract with one, which caused for him to be reverse summoned to Mount Myoboku. For reasons, probably because it was one of the great sage areas filled with a bunch of summoning animals. Maybe. They never really explain it. It's also technically not canon. However, it is the only explanation we ever get for how Jiraiya got linked up with the toads in the first place. Like, sure, is Jiraiya based off a Monogatari character who was also a toad sage? 100%. However, like we always say on this channel, if filler is the only place we get an answer to a pertinent question, then we should treat it as canon. But I'm not even saying that Boruto should try and summon a summoning animal, even though he has no contract with any of them, in hopes that he gets reverse summoned to Mount Myoboku and is able to talk to the toads, because that would be a ridiculous plan. What I am saying, however, is that Mount Myoboku exists on Earth. Well, yes, the best and most time-efficient way to get there is reverse summoning. There is a series of secret paths from Konoha that does take a month to traverse that are identified as the secret path to Mount Myoboku. And I'd imagine, while yes, this secret path does take a month to traverse for regular people, if you can, I don't know, fly, it may not take a full 30 days. Now, admittedly, Fukakusu, also known as Pa, said that it is impossible to traverse this path if you do not know where you're going. It is an incredibly long, winding, and treacherous path that is specifically made to be as confusing as possible so people don't accidentally wander into a great sage area. And therefore, I obviously don't expect Boruto to just doot-to-doot his way down this secret path that he doesn't even know about. And even if he did know about the secret path and even maybe how to traverse it, he would have to get into Konoha to start his journey. And while he has shown multiple times that getting into Konoha is relatively easy for him, as he's able to, like with other Otsutsukis, erase his chakra signature, he really didn't start doing that until very recently. Which means up until recently, he either didn't know how to erase his chakra signature or simply didn't want to break into Konoha until it was absolutely necessary, i.e. Code's invasion and the birth of the Shinju. So I'm not even saying that Boruto should have made his way to Mount Myoboku to try and get the toads that Naruto was a contract with to reverse summon him out of the Daikoku 10. But what I am saying is that Kashin Koji should have. Now, some of you may be assuming that I believe that because Kashin Koji is Jiraiya's clone, he must have all of his memories, and therefore not only know the location of the secret path, but also all of its twists and turns, allowing Kashin Koji, really whenever he wants to walk down this secret path, find the toads, and ask them, please, oh please, my great toad friends, could you reverse summon Naruto? But no, that's not what I'm thinking. See, yes, Kashin Koji has shown time and time again that he has all of Jiraiya's abilities. He has incredibly powerful fire release. He summons toads, he uses Rasengans, he's a perfect toad sage. But in the same way that every Delta clone has the exact same abilities, those abilities were most likely implanted to him by Amado. However, it is abundantly clear, in fact it is literally the entirety of Amado and Kawaki's current plot, that a clone does not have the memories and or personality of the person they're cloned from. This is why Delta might look like a Kebi, she's nothing like a Kebi, which is why Amado needs Kawaki to place a karma marking on a Delta clone. And therefore, with this in mind, it would stand to reason that Kashin Koji, who is a clone of Jiraiya, would not have his personality or memories, which is backed up by the fact that Kashin Koji acts nothing like Jiraiya. He's cold, stoic, not fatherly at all to Boruto, and has none of Jiraiya's perviness. That is to say, he's a better character. Oh, did that make you mad? Did that make you upset? Sorry, I like my teachers not forcing their underage students to turn into naked women for their enjoyment. Anyways, well, yes, it's been established that Kashin Koji has Jiraiya's moves, his battle IQ, and his experience. What he doesn't have is his lived experience, his memories, and his personality. Which means, more likely than not, he does not have knowledge of the secret path from Konoha to Mount Myoboku. However, he doesn't need to. See, because why would you need the knowledge of one path when you have the 10 paths? What would Future Sight have to do with any of this, Nick? Good question. See, undoubtedly, Kashin Koji understands that Naruto can summon toads. He knows who Naruto is. He knows he trained with Jiraiya, and he knows that he is a clone of Jiraiya. And Kashin Koji, over the course of Boruto, has displayed the ability twice to use reverse summoning, in 2 different ways, mind you. And both times were with toads. So undoubtedly, he understands that Naruto could probably do the same. He knows Naruto is a toad sage because he trained with Jiraiya, who he is a clone of, and therefore because he was a toad sage, he has to have a contract with the toads of Mount Myoboku. And if you have a contract with summoning animals, you can be reverse summoned by those summoning animals. That's literally how Naruto ends up in Mount Myoboku to train with the toads in the lead up to the Pain Assault. And it is also how Naruto gets back to Konoha to fight Nagato. But if Kashin Koji is able to summon and reverse summon toads, why doesn't he just convene with his toads? Why doesn't he just ask them to reverse summon Naruto? Well, that's because Kashin Koji's toads are not from Mount Myoboku. They are scientific ninja tools created by Almado to be used by Kashin Koji, which is why we can see them do a bunch of things that we've never seen toads do previously. See, well, yes, the toads of Mount Myoboku are able to do a bunch of crazy things, like smoke opium and wield gigantic swords. They're able to turn their bodies into gigantic scrolls, or swallow entire battlefields and surround them with an impenetrable stomach lining. The toads of Mount Myoboku are weird, but we've never seen those toads be able to act as a microphone and speaker, or a video camera and a projector. All things that Kashin Koji's toads are able to do. See, Kashin Koji is able to use his toads as a relay for his voice. By planting a toad on somebody like Ada or Shikamaru or Boruto, Kashin Koji is able to project his voice from that toad to talk to them from long distances away. On top of this, as we've seen during the current Mamushi invasion, Kashin Koji is also able to record things with one of his toads and project what's being recorded elsewhere with another one of his toads. These toads were also confirmed to be non-living things when they were able to be shrunk by the Sukuna Hikona of Jigen, which wasn't able to shrink living things that weren't himself. Ties into the fact that Kashin Koji has never summoned what could be identified as a Mount Myoboku toad, and the fact that all of his toads, but more so his bigger toads, are covered in what appear to be shinobi wear attachments, and sprinkle on the fact that none of the toads of Mount Myoboku were like, hey, is Jiraiya back? Why do we have a contract with another person all of a sudden? And yeah, it becomes pretty undeniable that the toads that Kashin Koji uses have nothing to do with the toads that Jiraiya and Naruto used. Wait, so Nick, I'm confused. So we've now established that Kashin Koji has no connection to Mount Myoboku, none of Jiraiya's memories, and therefore no way to get to Mount Myoboku. So how could he convene with the toads there to try to get them to reverse summon Naruto? Well, he has this funny ability called the 10 paths. See, well, yes, for the average person trying to figure out the secret path from Konoha to Mount Myoboku, it would be an impossible ask. However, Kashin Koji is not your average person. See, the literal second that Kashin Koji decided, you know what, I'm gonna go and try and find the toads, a new list of infinite futures would pour into his mind. A list of infinite futures, all of which he tried to find the toads. And therefore, Kashin Koji would essentially send out infinite clones to try and get to Mount Myoboku. Until eventually, statistically, one of them had to. See, yes, it should be impossible to accidentally end up at Mount Myoboku. However, if you try infinite times, statistically, you have to end up there at some point. And statistically, when one of the Kashin Kojis in an infinite line of futures does make it through the secret path, or finds some other way to get to Mount Myoboku, Kashin Koji would simply just do what that one iteration of the future did. I mean, it's a man who taught Boruto Flying Raijin and Rasengan Usahiko because he learned it in the future. A man who was able to pull Sumere's research from the future to hand it to her now in the current to allow her to change Boruto's Kusanagi blade into a scientific ninja tool. The dude who knew exactly when and where Code was going to invade Konoha and the exact weakness of all of the Shinjus before they even existed. He was able to resist the effects of omnipotence because he saw it coming. Now, I know some of you are saying, but Nick, Kashin Koji can't necessarily flip through every single one of these infinite futures to find the one that works. He himself admits that 10 Paths operates more like a hunch than it does actual future sight. And to that I say, yeah, I mean, I guess you're kind of right, but he's also admitted that the timeline that they're currently existing in is a tightrope walk, an incredibly slight chance that Kashin Koji and Boruto are orchestrating to keep afloat. They are not walking the most common path. Kashin Koji is having to parse through a ton of possible futures to find the one they're currently in, as the vast majority of futures simply end up with the world killed. And therefore him identifying the one or possibly multiple futures that lead him to Mount Myoboku is not insane. But Nick, even if Kashin Koji did make it all the way to Mount Myoboku, and even if he did plead with the toads there to try and reverse summon Naruto, they still wouldn't be able to. I mean, after all, he's trapped in a pocket dimension controlled by Kawaki where time doesn't pass. And yeah, you're right, he is trapped in the Daikokuten. And the Daikokuten is a pocket dimension that, like Kamui, Kawaki has complete and total control over. However, it is just a pocket dimension that Kawaki and Jigen and Ishiki use to store the objects that they shrink with their Sukuna Hikona. And while yes, objects placed in the Daikokuten do not experience the flow of time, and therefore are kept in pristine shape, which is why Naruto and Hinata haven't aged today, and why Jigen was able to store glasses of wine in there that he could pull out at any point, that doesn't change the fact that Naruto and Hinata are simply just in a different dimension. And as we know, pocket dimensions are not outside of the reach of other space-time ninjutsu. There's a reason that Kakashi never tried to use Kamui on Kaguya. It's because he knew the second that he teleported her to the Kamui dimension, she would simply be able to use Matsuhiro Arasaka to pop back to wherever they were right now. And we've seen the inverse of this when Obito, with his Kamui, was able to piggyback off the Matsuhiro Arasaka signature of Kaguya to teleport Team 7 and himself to Kaguya's location. But Nick, you say, neither of those are summoning techniques, and you're right, they're not. They're more like opening portals, which is inherently different from a summoning technique. However, a summoning technique is a space-time ninjutsu. And while we have less instances of summoning jutsus working across dimensions, we do have some. In fact, we have 3. 2 of which are in Two Blue Vortex. See, in Two Blue Vortex alone, at the very beginning, we see Boruto use Flying Raijin to jump to the Kara dimension. And Flying Raijin has repeatedly been described as a summoning jutsu for oneself, which is signified by the fact that in order to jump to a space, you have to place a seal at the space you want to go to, which is inherently how summoning jutsus and reverse summoning jutsus work. You have to make a seal at either the place you want to summon an animal to, or a seal has to be at the place that an animal wants to summon you to. Now, it does work for Boruto in a slightly different way, as he simply jumps to things marked by his chakra, but marking things with your chakra is just what a Flying Raijin seal does. But because Boruto isn't as good at Flying Raijin as Minato or Tobirama, he's not able to differentiate between a massive amount of seals, which is why he needs differently shaped pieces of metal. But still, in Chapter 3 of Two Blue Vortex, we see Boruto use Flying Thunder God to jump to Code's location, because Boruto is able to place a toad holding a unique piece of metal on Code that he could hone in on and jump to. And thus in this moment, Boruto proved that Flying Raijin could be used across dimensions, something he proved again after being cornered by the 4 Shinju as he used Flying Thunder God to jump away from that fatal encounter, or I guess soon to be fatal encounter. And this solidly proved a theory that had been brewing since Shippuden, which was created by Sasuke in the Kaguya fight. See, because in the battle between Kaguya and Team 7, when Kaguya was ripping other dimensions to her current location, there's a moment when she rips herself and all of Team 7 into the lava dimension. However, in order to ensure that he didn't fall into the lava, at this moment in time, Sasuke summons Garuda, his hawk summoning. summoning. And this moment right here is the first canonical instance of a summoning animal being summoned across dimensions. And with that anomaly being confirmed to be canonically possible by Boruto using Flying Thunder God to pop into the Kara dimension and out of it, it raises the logical and pertinent question as to whether or not Naruto could be reverse summoned. But at this moment in time, a lot of you are probably thinking, Nick, you keep saying reverse summoning. What does it mean? Well, reverse summoning can cause one of two things to happen. See, with the standard summoning technique, a shinobi summons an animal that they have a summoning contract with to their current location. However, reverse summoning, just like its name implies, does the exact opposite, allowing for a summoning animal to summon a shinobi to their current location. However, a reverse summoning doesn't really work the exact same way as a regular summoning. See, while regular summonings usually have some form of time limit, that is to say the summoning animal can only exist at this location for a certain amount of time before they poof back to where they came from, there is no time limit in the case of a reverse summoning, and that's important. Because this means if hypothetically Naruto were to be reverse summoned to Mount Myoboku by the Toads, he could just be in Mount Myoboku forever, or he could go back to the regular world. At no point would he be poofed back into the Daikokuten. And this is confirmed by the fact that when Naruto was reverse summoned to Mount Myoboku to train in Sage Mode, he's there for several days. He's never poofed back out to Konoha. On top of this, when Naruto is once again reverse summoned to Konoha to fight against Nagato, there's no point where he is reverse summoned back to Mount Myoboku because his time limit has expired. However, the summoning animals who do summon shinobi using the reverse summoning technique do have the ability to send those shinobi back to the places that they were summoned from. And therefore, if I guess hypothetically the Toads of Mount Myoboku wanted to send Naruto back to the Daikokuten, they could do that. But this isn't the only way that reverse summoning can work, as a new way to use reverse summoning was actually introduced with Kashin Koji. As Kashin Koji displayed in chapter 44, the ability to summon a summoning animal and then summon them somewhere else, allowing for either high-speed travel or escape from confinement. Now, what does this mean? It means essentially that Kashin Koji is able to summon a summoning animal to his location, climb on either its back or in its mouth, and then reverse summon that summoning animal somewhere else, allowing for him to essentially teleport. Now, obviously, this only works if Kashin Koji has placed a seal somewhere else, or if Kashin Koji is okay with going back to the place that the Toad was summoned from in the first place. But the important takeaway from all of this is that reverse summoning technique is not only still pertinent inside of the Boruto universe, but also incredibly useful and powerful. And considering the fact that Amado and Kashin Koji start in the Kara dimension before Amado sends Kashin Koji in his Toad's mouth to out in front of Konoha, it's been proven in Boruto already that reverse summoning can traverse dimensions. Furthermore, backed up by the fact that when Kashin Koji battles against Ishiki and is put into a situation where Ishiki is about to take his life, Kashin Koji once again uses a Toad to summon himself out of there, presumably out of the Kara dimension. So twice, reverse summoning has been shown to be able to traverse dimensions in Boruto by Kashin Koji. So if Kashin Koji could tell the Toads about Myoboku to try to reverse summon Naruto, they probably could, but it probably won't happen because Kashin Koji can't go to Mount Myoboku. Either because he can't find it, or thematically because it wouldn't make sense for a Jiraiya clone to end up in Mount Myoboku, or maybe because all of the Toads would view Kashin Koji's existence as an affront to the memory of Naruto and attack him, or simply because the 10 paths wouldn't be able to show Kashin Koji the true path to get to Mount Myoboku. All that is to say is that Naruto is not going to be reverse summoned, though he almost definitely could be, based off everything that we know, especially when you consider the fact that Ada can see everything that's going on with the Toads, and can see everything that happened for the last 16 years, and can see everything that happened on Earth over the course of her life. And therefore, if at any point Naruto or anybody else ever used the secret path from Konoha to Mount Myoboku, Ada would be immediately able to deduce the exact correct path to take. But it probably won't happen. And honestly, outside of the fact that either the path hasn't been used over the course of Ada's life, or regardless of how hard Kashin Koji could try with his 10 paths, there's no way he would be able to ever deduce how to use the secret path correctly. I truly cannot find an in-universe explanation to explain why this has not been attempted. And thus I'm opening it up to you guys. Do you have an answer for this plot hole? If you do, tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you'll excuse me, Majulo's leaks are massively delayed, and I have to sit around waiting for them all